Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, we go all in on our new print issue. This week is the launch of our 4th annual print magazine, and we gather to talk about the themes, the contents and contributors that go into this edition of Scandinavian Mind. We will talk about our 2 cover stories with DangHo and Joel HellermarkAnd. This year's theme, virtual creativity, how AI and 3D technologies are behind the visual stories. We'll also take a look behind the scenes of creating a print magazine in the year 2023. And we have a special gift for our listeners at the end of the show. My name is Konrad Olsson, Editor-in-Chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind. And I'm sitting here in the podcast studio of our headquarters at Helio Coworking Space in Stockholm with my dear colleagues Erik Sedin and a rare appearance by our creative director Erik Olofsson. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here again.
Can we Erik? Can we get Erik Sedin? Can we start with a little print fanfare, just to prove that we're sitting here with a copy each of our new print magazine. Came yesterday from the printers. We're recording this on a Tuesday. What's your first impressions, guys? Erik, how about you?
First impression is always I'm scared. I'm nervous to navigate through this slowly and to kind of make sure that everything is all right. And this is sort of the first flick through. I just got this in my hands right now. But okay, so I'll have to get back to you. You guys start.
That's why we have this show. Erik Sedin, what's the impressions when you open this magazine?
I remember how we joked about it last time. How our last issue, number 3, was like my 3rd child. So I see it as perfect. There's no imperfections. It's perfect the way it is. This is my 4th magazine with my name on it, on a physical magazine. I'm still kind of like romanticizing about it. I have a hard time finding anything wrong about it still. It's very exciting for me still. And a great issue, this one.
And you are also debuting with a cover story this time. You wrote the story with DangHo, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and so that's personally for me quite big, and I feel very proud.
I love to hear that, and thank you, Erik, for bringing that positivity. I think I've been doing this for closer to 20 years. There's always this kind of hesitation, as Erik alluded to, when you open it and you feel like what there's something there's always something that you got wrong, and I love your positive energy.
I bet you, Sedin, since you're a child of the internet, you probably don't know that we can't change anything now on the paper. You know that we can't update it. No.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because why do a print magazine in this day and age? And people who follow us probably follow us mostly online through our newsletter, maybe through our social channels, maybe through this podcast feed, all of which is are distributed digitally. But every once in a while we do this print magazine, and that is partly, I think, because of our backgrounds. Maybe me and Erik Olofsson, as founders of this brand, we have a background in print production. We are at that age that worked professional with this almost full time, way back when. And but it begs the question, because and just a short reflection, I was at the Berg School of Communication lecturing the other week, talking about my career and talking about my role as editor-in-chief and doing magazines. And one of the students, a young woman, probably in her early 20s, she raised her hand and asked, quite sincerely, and I don't blame her, but she asked, "What do you do? What's an editor-in-chief?" And and that's when I realized that, okay, my role, this role of being an editor-in-chief, which I've had for 16 years or so.
That's harsh, man. That's harsh.
It's like, it doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, for a young person growing up, at least a few years ago, people had people maybe born in the mid-90s, where you're at, Erik Sedin, still had a sense of what magazines kind of played, what kind of role they played in culture. Whereas I think the the people growing up born in the early aughts, like 2002, 2003. These are people who are 20 years old today. I don't think they have a relationship to print at all. It's all content.
I think that's interesting how you said that, and we might get into the cover story with DangHo later. But I remember them telling me, because they're kind of my age, they're like, we really miss the traditional media, or like, they're huge on Julia, one of them. She's basically an influencer, right? She told me like, this is so nice to get like your hands on something physical. So if there's anyone out there listening to this that's born in the noughties, I'm not sure, but there's something called magazine it holds a great cultural value to many of us.
I think it's exactly that. It's something else than what your everyday digest of media is, and for us it's also opportunity to really sharpen our senses, to sharpen our craft, to do the best possible stories, to get in touch with the talent and the people that we want to learn from, right?
We'll keep talking about that, Erik, because and I want to hear from the creative director's perspective. I mean, you oversee all kind of visual aspects of the brand. As we mentioned, it's probably 95% digital by now. When we go into a print project like this, what are some of the things you are looking for or trying to express or do that's uniquely for this format?
I think it's about what I just said, to try to push the creativity and to learn from different types of techniques, and to explore techniques, and to explore like mixing techniques, and really try to do stuff on this palette that we have.
Absolutely, and for us as a brand, I just add to that it really is an opportunity to celebrate everything that we stand for. We do so much. We produce so much content every week. We host our events. There's at least one big conference or event every quarter nowadays, and then we have the agency business, which we serve our clients with. So there's so many parts of our palette, and it feels like in the print magazine, when we do this every year, it's kind of where everything comes together. We can kind of manifest the entirety of it, and also gives us an opportunity to celebrate. And we're actually doing 3 different kind of launch events and parties to celebrate this to our community, which I'm really excited about. And stick around for that. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But let's get into the theme of the issue, which I think is very timely. We found this headline, virtual creativity. I don't know exactly where that came from, but basically the idea of the magazine was to dive into how creativity is changing storytelling. What does our new technologies and new tools and platforms mean for kind of the creative expression? And this it was the basis for researching our 2 cover stories, but also the big special, which we call Virtual Creativity, Defining the Next Generation of Digital Storytellers. Erik, Sedin, you have been working quite a lot on this, we should say, together with our researcher and writer Megha Prakash. Can you set this up a little bit for us? What were we aiming for when doing this list?
So that's the theme of the whole magazine, virtual creativity. So this is kind of like the backbone of the magazine, I guess, the structure. But shout out Megha. She was the one who basically did 95% of the research. Going on Instagram, going on Discord, going on the small crevices of the internet. Maybe not the dark web, but like going on comments, seeing who's tagged, who's liked this post. Because that's what I told her as the editor. I was like, I don't want these big ones, these white guys. I want to have some small ones. The people that open a magazine have never seen before, but they can just tell, wow, they're talented, to hear what they have to say. So I'm very proud of this list. I think we ended up with 12 names in the end, out of, at the time we probably had like 50, 60. But we just got down to the best ones, I believe. And, it's everything from Mustafa Sherpedin, who's like a very small, very not so known Norwegian artist, CGI artist. who's playing around a lot in Unreal Engine. We've been talking about this on this podcast before, which I think is very fascinating. From him to Andreas Wennerstedt, who I think a lot of people who listen to this know who it is. This very like viral sensation on Instagram and Facebook, because he does these oddly satisfying loops of stuff coming together, and and it's really fun to hear his word on like, hey, when I started posting on Instagram, like he was one of the first ones to do it. And how can you use these virtual platforms like Instagram? It's an institution now, but back then it wasn't. And hearing him talking about NFTs and should you maybe look at Discord and stuff like that. So it's kind of a map of virtual creativity and its platforms and the tools these creative people are using.
Talk about that. I really love the way we kind of divided each. It's almost like a small portrait, everyone in this list. And we divided it by presenting them as artists, but also presenting the platform that they've become known to, or their preferred platforms, and also their tools. Talk about why we did this distinction between these three kind of pillars.
That's just basically to show, partly for the reader to understand quite easily, okay, what do these people do? Because sometimes even me writing this, what are they actually doing? There's a lot of new words, there's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of tools and platforms that you might not have heard of. Especially me, I'm not a virtual creative at all. I use my laptop to write text, but visually, not at all. So partly it was for me as an editor, and for me I got to understand, who are these people and what's needed for you to do your art, and where do you share it. So just a way for us editorially to showcase these people and what they're doing for your grandma, or for me, or for, I don't want to say your dog, but your friend that doesn't really hang out on the internet. They should understand it too.
Right, but it's not only visuals, right? You tapped into different creative fields. Music?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. Most of these are artists, they're visually creative in a way. But for example, we have Michel Traoré, the co-founder of Another Block. And what they do is they make we talked about this on a couple episodes back when we talked about the music industry, and we mentioned Another Block, how new technologies can change that. But what they do is you buy parts of your favorite song, and then you can get a small share of your favorite song through an NFT, and then as it plays throughout history, you'll get some money for it, and you're investing in your favorite artist. So it's also that, the platform, that's not really a visual artist. You're right, Erik. That's something different. It's just people that are kind of using NFTs or the Web3 or blockchain or social media to just be creative and, build communities and just create. So yeah, it's way more than just the visual stuff.
I love how it's kind of a time capsule we did here. We put all these sort of digital artists and creatives into a print magazine. We kind of did a similar thing a year ago when we launched the digital fashion issue, which chronicled kind of everything digital fashion and gaming. Were there some platforms or technologies that stood out when you think about this, that you learned about? That was kind of new to you, or open your mind somehow?
What I thought was interesting was kind of what a divider Discord was.
Right.
In my mind, I was like, I'm reaching out to these creatives online. They're all going to be on Discord, right? Because that's what you're reading everywhere. Discord is a new thing. Everyone's on there. Some of these guys were like, no, I've never used it. I think it's too complicated. I don't know how to use it, which kind of resembled with me. And some other ones were like, that's my go-to spot. That's where I get all my inspiration. I think it was interesting to get those contrasts from these people. Regardless of age, regardless of what creative field, Discord has really, I've been trying to wrap my head around it for a couple of years now. Still not so clear, but yeah.
And we are still not there as a platform, so we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Erik Olofsson, I think visually this magazine kind of, springs from this theme. Can you say anything about why it looks the way it looks?
Yeah, we have a very distinct green color this time. I was sort of, for me, like the starting point of setting the framework.
It's part of what the early sketches, early
right,
comps.
Yeah, you gotta get because it relates to this very bright, clean sort of green screen color.
Yeah.
So it relates to like virtual worlds or like mixing worlds in that sense. So what we had to do was we had to run the covers and parts of the magazine twice through the printing press, because this RGB color space that we were aiming for, that is sort of super, like it's an electric green color that you recognize from your screen, and the regular print spectrum couldn't interpret that, so we had to physically like buy another can of ink, like a neon green ink to make that pop in the right way, which I think turned out pretty nice.
Great to hear some of the nuts and bolts of making this. So from this, let's go into the first of our or one of our cover stories. This duo DangHo, which you also interviewed and wrote, Erik Sedin. Why did we decide to profile these guys this big compared to all of the other creatives we have in the magazine?
Yeah, so like I said, that in the end we had 12 people in the list, in the Virtual Creative list. At the beginning we had 50, 60, and then we kind of boiled it down. And when these guys, Julia Dang and Mickey Ho, when they came up in the research, everything just kind of clicked in a way. They had a lot of experience with big fashion campaigns. We could see their early stuff. We could see, that they were used to being in front of the camera and behind the camera. So just visually, it was just nail on the head. And then, as I did my research, Julia, she's an influencer. She has a YouTube account, and she's been on the internet since she was like 13. So it was quite easy to research. I just thought they had a quite interesting story, and how they, obviously since they've been online, they've tapped into virtual culture so long.
Yeah.
Julia's whole life has been on the internet since she got her first computer. She's born the same year as me, 95. So really interesting. And then Mickey, the other person, the partner, she's like the creative, the visual genius in this. And she's like this kind of really laid back, quite shy person. They really contrast each other.
And they have, upwards of almost 1 million followers across multiple different platforms. And they feel it feels like they're very comfortable working on, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. They're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
What did you learn when speaking to them about the way they work and the way they tackle these platforms?
I remember them saying how they felt they were years ahead of the rest of Scandinavia in their visual identity. Yeah. They said no one can compare to them, and I thought it was interesting. And then, as I did my research, I kind of have to agree with them. And they say it all comes from Southeast Asian culture. Because, they were like, oh, South Korea is 10 years ahead. Vogue China is 100 years ahead of what we're doing here in Europe. According to them, that's their words, not mine, and how they view aesthetics and how they view fashion and art and just patterns. They would tell me like, oh, we watched this anime called Belle, and we just saw the intro with like different flowers flying around, and we were like, we have to do a campaign about that. So people that are into anime and manga or Southeast Asian culture, I think you can kind of tell also from looking at these pictures that they kind of got this very South Korean vibe going on. So that was interesting to hear. And they were talking about, I think, I never heard it before, you might have, it's called like, I think it was grayish. They talked about they don't like the Scandinavian grayish color palette, which I guess is beige and gray together.
Yeah.
And, if that's what you like, maybe you won't like their stuff, and this, visually at least, this editorial, but I remember them saying like, that's not what we do. Other people are great at it. We have some plugs and some inspiration sources that none in Sweden have, or Scandinavia.
Yeah, but we unpack that in the DangHo starter pack.
I think it's my favorite page in the whole magazine.
On page 62, you can see all the resources.
Yeah, it's for people that are meme connoisseurs, which I hope everyone is. It's like the classic starter pack meme. Just you take a person or a phenomena, and then you put a little collage underneath with how to describe that person in a starter pack. So maybe we can share some of the stuff. And it's Need for Speed 2 for PlayStation 2. There's Belle, the anime I talked about. There's a Chainsaw Man, another anime, and then all their. God, they use so many programs.
World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft is in there.
I particularly like the kind of Photoshop background, the check pattern. that the chess pattern, we'll say. No, it's a beautiful page. Kind of interpreted tongue-in-cheek. Meme goes print, traditional print.
Honoring early internet culture, virtual culture.
And from that, when I picked this up and I just flicked through it, I was like, probably the most beautiful magazine we've done with Scandinavian Mind, the 4th issue. I just love all the visual stories as well. Erik Olofsson, can you talk a little bit about the visual stories? We have one kind of still life story with longtime contributor Niklas Hansen has done this. It's made by CGI Studio Seek, and a couple of fashion stories. Maybe we start with Niklas Hansen's story.
Yeah, so it was obvious that we wanted to do a interior or like a still life story in CGI in some way. So I started to reach out to some creatives, some 3D artists and studios to kind of like, hey, you wanna do something, and they were like, they didn't really get what I wanted to do. So like, what's
print? What's that?
What's print? Like, what are you even talking about? What's like editorial story? Like, what's in it for us? Like, what do you want? What are you talking about? So then we tried. Me and Niklas tried sort of the other way around. So Niklas is a set designer that we worked on shoots earlier for many years, like you said, and he kind of owned the project took the project from his side and pitched it to his friends in Copenhagen, Sigurd and Caroline at Seek CGI. So, and then we kind of got the foot in the door, and they were super happy to do it. And what we tried to do with that also was obviously to not only create like beautiful object stories with objects that exists in this world. We tried to, like, in different ways do impossible things, like, well, how can we push this a little bit? So the main theme is sort of like the objects are balancing in ways that are not possible. It sort of defies gravity, and we have some objects that are, you don't even know what it is. It's sort of some sort of balloons, but it's hard to tell. So I think that turned out really nice.
Almost like hand-blown glass somehow.
Hand-blown glass, balloon, blob kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask actually, because the story, even though it's 3D, it's eerily tactile and analog in its feel, and it's all these woods and so forth. And I know Niklas has a huge archive of different things. Do you know, has he used his own archive of set design and props to do this? Or?
Yeah, probably like from mood boards.
Yeah,
sure. And there's a lot of wood, a lot of textile, a lot of iron, and then contrast to these objects that you don't even know what it is. So I think that turned out like a really nice in a really nice way.
Yeah, it's also wonderful to see that you kind of can see Niklas's voice in this, even though we're mostly used to seeing him doing physical set design. Yeah. So let's move on to the two fashion stories that we have published here.
Yeah, first we have a photography and 3D mixed story. So, and that was Rickard Lilja, who's a photographer and 3D artist, and a stylist, Åsa Maria Kamnert, who reached out like late last year probably, and wanted to do something based on exactly that. How can we, like, the question in the intro here to the story in print, a short text on why do we even need to travel anymore, doing campaigns, doing shoots, like it's all there, just kind of green screen it all and do whatever you want. So that's kind of the approach to that, and they really I think they really nailed that in terms of creating stunning, interesting 3D worlds, combining with the fashion.
Beautiful. And then the last one is from Oskar Gyllensvärd and Amanda Herlin, right?
Yeah, and the innovation in this story is not so much technical. It's rather innovation in material.
Right.
Here we have a curation of garments that are in different ways produced to be sustainable, or to be long lasting, or to be recyclable in different ways that we talk about in our on our transformation conference.
Definitely, it feels like it's a kind of a showcase for the transformation conference, and many of the brands like Renewcell, Circulose is featured here, and you know, Finnish brands like Marimekko and upcycling brands like Danish Divisions. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, and the set design is then made as a sunset or a sunrise, so that we can feel like this is the beginning of an era, this is the end of an era. You know, you have to produce in this way.
All right, finally, we should mention our second cover story, an interview I did with a Swedish entrepreneur, you know, kind of boy genius, Joel HellermarkAnd from Sana, formerly Sana Labs. I'm just going to read the intro because I'm super happy with it. Joel HellermarkAnd was only 19 when he started Sana, an AI-powered knowledge platform he describes as the Google for companies. Today, at 26, the Swedish entrepreneur runs a 3 billion SEK company that is expanding to London and New York. I mean, this was kind of the intro to doing this story. I've been fascinated by Joel for a long time. I was super happy that he was willing to do this quite long interview, and it turned out to be super timely. We booked this, I think, early fall. We started having these conversations, and then, of course, in November, ChatGPT blew up, and listeners of this show know we've been talking a lot about generative artificial intelligence, and it was very interesting to sit down for a couple of hours with a true expert, and maybe at least, you know, if not in the Sweden and the Nordics, and perhaps even the world's forward-thinking sort of AI scientists. So hopefully we can publish some kind of outtake from that conversation in this feed. I'm not gonna go that much into this story, but maybe we can just go a little bit behind the scenes and talk about the shoot, because we were also able to portray Joel in Sana's new headquarters in Stockholm. And Erik, we decided to use Andreas Ackerup for this, kind of going in the other opposite direction we've just talked about. He had a different method of shooting.
Yeah, he wanted to shoot analog, just to kind of give it because the space is so beautifully designed. It's a stunning, like a dream office. What words did they use themselves to describe the?
Yeah, it's designed by the studio Halleröd, architecture duo, famous for doing many of Acne Studios, and I think it's you know, kind of a combination of some kind of a, you know, Italian 70s kind of apartment with some kind of Japanese type library, very analog, very like the whole.
Exactly.
They're working with kind of top of the line, you know, cutting edge digital stuff, but when you walk in there, you feel like you're in some kind of almost like a furniture showroom from something super retro,
like analog futurism.
Yeah.
Did you get the impression that he was style conscious, like, you know, clothing wise, and obviously the office has a lot, but maybe that's not him.
Not clothing. I mean, he's very, you know,
tech bro.
You know, it's not even that. I mean, thankfully not that. So I feel like the whole office had some kind of a Scandinavian take on this whole like relaxed tech office. It was. They had some of the kind of what do you say, the cliches about a tech office is like super relaxed. There's like a pool table and fat boys everywhere and people playing video games and having snacks all the time. And you know, if you look at some early photos of like Facebook offices, everyone was walking around in hoodies and so forth. I feel like this office has kind of like the same vibe. It's very relaxed, and he talks about he wants it to kind of feel like an apartment. It's a place where you kind of just hang out and express ideas, and they gather in a big kitchen table for lunch to kind of hang out and share ideas. So that part of it is kind of a little bit tech cliche-ish, but it's definitely more stylish, and it felt like a really young crowd. I mean, obviously, Joel himself is 26, started the company when he was 18, started programming when he was 13, so it feels like he represents a new generation of tech entrepreneurs, and a lot of people I saw there were probably in the same generation.
Yeah, and then we brought Andreas Ackerup. He always comes with a great energy to the shoots, and I think that will be a good match to Joel's personality as well. So we did it more like point and shoot style, because everything is so beautiful anyway. So let's just go, bring the energy in.
I think that worked perfectly, and it kind of goes together with Joel's personality. And I'm not going to do the interview justice in just a few minutes, and it's probably the longest piece I've ever written. We publish only about half of the conversation, but still I think it's like 40,000 characters or something. We get into this whole situation with AI, where he thinks it's going, and even though he's quite forward thinking, and ultimately he says at some point that he doesn't feel like there's anything intrinsically unique about the human mind or the human experience. It's not. It's in his mind, it's something we will be able to reproduce in a synthetic or digital setting. But what I loved about doing this profile, and which I think we managed to convey in this story, is that he's got very human-centric approach to it, and he talks about how when he was very young, in like early teens, he wanted to augment human intelligence. That's what he's aiming for. That's why he's into this. That's kind of his drive. He wants to make human intelligence better through these technologies.
Yeah, it was a great read, and you can tell he, despite his age, he's kind of an AI pioneer. He's been there since the start, I guess.
Absolutely, and you can, obviously, it's worth 3 billion SEK now, or 2.8 or something. And after I didn't quite understand what they did, to be honest, before I started working on this, but I now have the sense that why these big VC companies are going into this is, of course, if there's even a remote possibility that Sana can become, somewhere near the new Google or the new Microsoft, the new ChatGPT, there's obviously huge opportunity there. All right, guys, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. It was great sitting down to just have kind of the first or second flick through of the magazine together with you guys. There are, of course, other things happening in this issue. We have, of course, a series of transformation portraits, which we always do in the beginning of the magazine. A wonderful collection of personalities from all over the Nordics. We're also launching a preview of the State of Beauty Innovation report, which our colleague Johan Magnusson has worked very hard on. But we'll get him on the podcast, and we'll talk more dedicatedly about that. And there's also some wonderful guides and news stories and lists that are a selection of our online content that makes its way into the print edition. So I promised a little gift to our listeners at the end of the show. We released these on Friday. So next Wednesday, May 3rd, we will have a launch party of this issue in central Stockholm together with our dear friends at Picture This Gallery. So I think we can promise 5, maybe 10 seats for our podcast listeners. So if you want to visit us, get your hands on a free copy, mingle with us in the editorial team. What the heck? Email me directly, Konrad@scandinavianmind.com, and I'll set you up with a spot on the list. The first 5 definitely gets in. We may be able to do more.
Let's say 10. Come on.
Let's say 10. All right. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Erik Olofsson, a creative director. His yearly appearance should be more, right?
It's like therapy, yearly therapy session.
It's virtual creativity therapy session, and of course, Erik Sedin, our regular on the show. Thank you so much. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter not to miss out on this content when it rolls out online. And also, of course, visit scandinavianmind.com to order your copy of issue 4. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.